Mixed signals as Huawei still effectively banned from doing business in the U.S. But a new move by the Commerce Department would allow the Chinese telecom giant to purchase U.S. goods so it can continue support for existing customers in order not to interrupt service. This comes in the form of a new license agreement. So joining us now to break it all down, investigative journalist Ben Swann. Hey there, Ben. So can you elaborate on this move from the Commerce Department for us?
Sure, absolutely. The Commerce Department is essentially saying that U.S. companies cannot buy or sell with certain entities, that's what they're calling them, on this list. And the entities list includes companies like cell phone maker ZTE and also Huawei, as you mentioned. And so the idea here is essentially that these companies pose a threat to the United States. They pose a threat to national security. That's the claim. And so companies cannot work with them by either buying or selling. And as a result of that, less than 24 hours ago, Google announced that it is no longer going to allow Huawei to access its Android platform for future updates for their phones.
Yeah, we will touch on that. Hold that thought for a second with Google here. But I mean, let me ask you, with all of this bluster, or might the Trump administration moves against Huawei have a lasting effect? Is it bluster, or are there some unintended consequences here, Ben?
Well, I think there's always unintended consequences. Let's start there, right? Yeah. That's almost a given, because everything that the U.S. government does in order to impose its will does not happen in a vacuum. And so there's always consequences as a result of it. I think what's about to happen here is that the U.S. government is actually going to make Huawei a better company, in that they're forcing them to no longer rely on Google and Android, for instance, and saying you're going to have to go out and create your own platforms to be able to function for future updates. And when you do that, yes, it's bluster to some extent, but it's also forcing the hand of these companies to say, well, we're going to have to take more seriously the fact that we can't be dependent on American companies. And this actually has a huge effect on Silicon Valley, which is dependent upon selling a lot of this technology and selling it to these foreign entities. Again, Silicon Valley companies don't operate only within the United States, right, and it's going to have a huge impact on their global markets.
Yeah, I mean, that's $11 billion they did last year with Silicon Valley alone, just from selling parts to them. So as you were talking about Google and the Android stuff, so Google has now cut off Huawei's Android license, forcing them to use their open source version. In plain language, what does that mean to the everyday user?
Well, what it means right now is no change at all. What it will mean in the future is that future updates will no longer work. And so what we've learned, according to a spokesman from Google, the Google Play services still work on those Huawei phones, and Google security services still work on those phones. What will happen is in the future, for updates, you won't be able to update the phone. But Huawei says that they have already been anticipating this for some time, and they've already been working on developing their own platform separate from the Android platform. Let's face it, right now in the cell phone world, there's really two platforms. You have the iOS system from Apple, and you have an Android system from Google. Well, now Huawei says, well, we've been developing it for some time because we've been anticipating we'll get cut off at some point, and that's what just happened. So
now that this order against Huawei, it expands not only to just them, it's not exclusive to them, but also to something like 68 affiliates in 26 different countries, Ben. How do you see this playing out, and where is the end? Because this is a global issue.
Yeah, it really is a global issue. And what's interesting about it is that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So every time I talk about this issue, I hear from people who say, you just don't understand the threat of the Chinese. What I do not understand is how Huawei's phone is posing such a threat to the United States, that not only does the U.S. not want it sold here, they don't want it sold anywhere in the world. And I think it still comes back to, and until I see evidence otherwise, it comes back to this trade war and leverage on the part of the Trump administration, as well as the goal of the Trump administration to put the U.S. first in terms of 5G technology, which they are not right now. I think the goal of this move is to cut off resources to Huawei to slow them down, but I don't think it's going to have the effect the Trump administration thinks it will have. So
just take us back a little bit and recap here, Ben. The government, our government's reason to ban Huawei is because it claims their equipment could be used by the Chinese government to spy on American networks, right? So isn't this kind of like the pot calling the kettle black?
Well, Oh, it absolutely is. I mean,
like, no, we can spy on our people.
We're the only ones who can spy on our people. That's right. We're the only ones who can do that. Don't be trying to spy. And look, the idea that the U.S. government is fearful of phones that can be used for spying because they're afraid that the Chinese government would have access to this. And I don't want the Chinese government to have access to my personal and private information. Absolutely not. Nor do I want the U.S. government to have access to that. Nor do I want the NSA to have access.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. The U.S. government does not have a foot to stand on when we know that every cell phone in America has been part of its spying program.
That's right. I mean, hello, Snowden leaks, just saying. But that's going back too many years. Maybe the government thought we forgot. As always,
short-term memory.
As always, Ben, appreciate this talk. Ben Swann, thank you.
Manila, thanks.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.